from Spain strikes a lovely chord in our hearts here in the sunny south of England and brings to an end this week's Music of the Nations. Join me next week at the same time here on Radio Brighton.
I'll have 20 tenors cherry flan.
There's a lot of money come in for cherry flan at Brandmore.
In the racing game tomorrow, Sid bets on a suspect winner.
Verse number 4, cherry flan.
How did you manage to pick out that 20-to-1 shot?
Well, let's just say that I met a chap who was very confident.
You do take chances, don't you? Mind you, they reckon that about you when you were riding and all. Well, Sid, we're not riding round Cheltenham now. And there's enough dough involved in this for people to do very nasty things.
Tough company in the racing game tomorrow, 9:10 on ITV.
Bringing you a taste of the days of good living. Old England British Sherry. Smooth, mellow, and gloriously mature at a very modest price. Old England British Sherry. Bringing you a taste of the days of good living. Old England British Sherry.
This Christmas, give someone the chance to keep the whole of next year's memories. Those moments that only happen once, keep them with Kodak. Because Kodak cameras are also easy to use. There's the new Kodak Extra camera with a steadying handle and a built-in flash. Then, the new Kodak Instant camera. Gives all the fun of instant pictures with the good color you'd expect from Kodak. And you'll be glad to know you can get copies made. Now, for someone's first camera, the Kodak Pocket A1 camera takes big, beautiful pictures almost twice its size. Have a happy Christmas, a colorful new year, and give someone the chance to keep it. Keep it with Kodak.
I don't write shampoo. I write Vosine. People know they can ask more of Vosine. I can ask Vosine to control the dandruff in my family just by regular shampooing. But more than that, it's something they'll all use. Fresh smelling that gives a clean, healthy looking shine. I know I can ask more of Vosine.
Ask more of Vosine. Family dandruff control, approved by all the family. Philips, simply years ahead.
Great news! Surf now make an automatic powder too. So you can buy a high-quality automatic powder and get all the cleanness you want at a square deal price. Always. Get new Square Deal Surf Automatic.
Ritz have a delicious taste that's all their own, so start Ritz cracking today. Everybody Ritz cracking!
Old Master chocolate liqueurs. Because for some people, only Old Master will do. Only Old Master are enrobed in rich Tobler chocolate that mingles with the liqueurs she loves to produce pure delight. And only Old Master come in such beautiful boxes. Bring a little romance to the present day with Old Master chocolate liqueurs by Tobler.
After 19 months, after 100,000 detentions, after 10 million sterilizations, the Indian people voted Mrs. Gandhi out of power. The Janata Party swept to power on a promise of bread and freedom. But just how real is this pledge? How deep the seeds of democracy? Before the Monsoon, tonight at 10:30 on ITV.
This is Thames from London.
"52,000 steel jobs go, 11 pits may close. Lord Soames is off to Rhodesia, but Labour's unhappy. Oil prices may rise 30%, gold is at a record. Why the Aberfan disaster should never happen again. And how England and Geoffrey Boycott are on top of the world." Good evening. The British Steel Corporation, losing £1 million a day, has said 52,000 jobs must go. That's a third of its present workers. In steel communities tonight, there were calls for protest strikes and for the government to think again. In South Wales, the miners say it'll mean half their pits will have to close, with up to 20,000 more jobs lost. The union's talking about a return to the 1930s. This is where the axe will fall. At Port Talbot and Llanwern, up to 10,000 steel jobs will go. British Steel want that urgently. At Scunthorpe in Lincolnshire, 2,800 jobs will go. At Consett in County Durham, steel making will end, 4,000 jobs lost. The Hallside works near Glasgow will close, 600 jobs lost. On top of that, the unions claim another 2,500 jobs will disappear in cutbacks at rolling mills at 9 other plants. Here's our industrial correspondent, Michael Green.
Saving money isn't cheap. Steel Corporation executives confess that they'll have to spend £250 million to cut their output back into line with domestic and world demand. Much of that will go in redundancy handouts to the sacked steelworkers. Even after the cuts, we'll still be lagging behind even our European competitors in efficiency. Each British steelworker produced 141 tons of steel last year. When the cuts are finished, it'll be up to 185 tons a man. But France is already at that level, and West German steelworkers made more than 200 tons each. BSC say this spells the end for some historic iron and steel centres, and that even the remaining 100,000 jobs aren't totally secure.
Is that the total number of employees Now, nobody can guarantee a thing like that because it depends upon the development of the whole United Kingdom industry and its economy, which, as you know, is at the moment moving downwards. And I sincerely hope it will stop at a level which we can satisfy with our new core plants of 15 million tonnes. But no one can guarantee where this will stop.
Well, the unions would argue that you're in fact eating away the core by these measures.
They would be wrong if they argued that. We are not eating into the core of the business, and what we have now is exactly the core, which we reckon we can retain. Good plants, we've got our best plants. With them we should satisfy our customers. With that we should return to the viability that we need to get the investment and on to success.
The main union said tonight that British steelmaking could never expand from such savage cuts. And the union, which is already on course for a national strike from January the 2nd over a 2% pay offer, is hoping for broader trade union support in fighting the closures. Will this include sympathy action from other workers?
Well, that's something which I wouldn't like to answer at this stage as far as the broad industrial action is concerned. But I have no doubt the miners and other people are in a state of mind, the same as my own members, that something should be done positively to persuade them not to take this course of action, which will be absolutely disastrous for this industry and for this country.
The unions are hoping to meet Sir Keith Joseph, the Industry Secretary, on Thursday and persuade him to ease cash limits and slow down the closures. Meanwhile, the anger British Steel anticipated was boiling up in the worst-hit areas. Ken Rees assesses the prospects in South Wales.
In South Wales, detailed options are still being discussed, but it all adds up to one thing. 10 to 15,000 jobs lost spread between the two giant plants at Llanwern and Port Talbot. Initial shock reaction at today's news has tonight turned into hostility, and not just among the steelworkers, who've now seen their worst fears about redundancies more than realised. It's a body blow to the South Wales coalfield. The NCB said that over half their South Wales business could vanish as a result of BSC cutbacks. If Llanwern and Port Talbot are cut by half, then 11 pits producing 1.6 million tonnes a year will close, putting 7,000 miners out of work. At Llanwern Steelworks, where they commissioned Britain's biggest blast furnace just over 3 years ago, the end of steelmaking was unthinkable until today. The effect on the whole economy of South Wales is almost impossible to measure. Coal Board and steelworks between them pump hundreds of millions into the economy as buyers of goods and services and payers of wages. The Mayor of Newport is also a Llanwern steelworker with his job on the line. How does he feel?
Very bitter. My background is that I'm from the Rhondda Valley. I have seen what has happened in the Rhondda Valley in the 1930s. When there was great unemployment, when there was great suffering, hardship and anguish. And to think that this is now going to happen in this area, I'm absolutely disgusted and shocked. I'm very embittered.
Tonight there are calls for work sharing, threats of strike action from miners and all the deep anger Sir Charles Villiers predicted. Ken Rees, News at 10, South Wales.
The British Governor of Rhodesia, Lord Soames, has left to take up his duties in Salisbury. As he boarded his plane, the illegal Rhodesian Parliament dissolved itself. So ended 14 years of UDI. Rhodesian MPs unanimously passed a bill stating that Zimbabwe Rhodesia shall cease to be an independent state and shall become part of Her Majesty's dominions. In London, the Foreign Secretary Lord Carrington presented new ceasefire proposals to the Patriotic Front, which, he said, would present no danger of an attack on them from Salisbury forces. In the Commons, the opposition questioned the wisdom of sending Lord Soames to Salisbury before a ceasefire had been finally agreed. Mr. Callaghan asked what would happen if the Rhodesian military commander, General Walls, staged another raid into Zambia or Mozambique, as happened at the weekend.
He must have some general instructions as to the way he is to conduct himself. If, for example, General Walls orders another excursion into the surrounding territories. And it is this question that could involve this country in being held responsible by the world for what takes place.
I did try to say to the right honourable gentleman earlier, the Salisbury administration accepts the governor's authority. So that in fact...
The final decision to send Lord Soames today wasn't taken till this morning. After lunch, he and his wife Mary had a last meeting at the Foreign Office with Lord Carrington, the man who'd chosen him for the job. For a moment, the smiles overshadowed the size of the task ahead. Lord Carrington said goodbye, knowing full well that the next few days at Lancaster House will decide just how strong or fragile the peace is going to be. Lord Soames, could I ask you whether you're looking forward to it? Of course. What are any last-minute worries? It was a risk sending Lord Soames today, and Lord Carrington knows it. The war is still going on, and it won't stop until there's an agreement at Lancaster House. When the governor arrives tomorrow, he takes command of the Rhodesian forces, an army at war with the guerrillas. The British thinking is that he had to go today for 3 reasons. 1, the risk of losing the momentum built up at the conference for a quick agreement. 2, fears that further Rhodesian raids into Zambia and Mozambique could wreck the talks. Top of the governor's list will be to stop those attacks. And 3, to win Rhodesia friends in Africa. For example, Lord Soames will be trying to restart maize shipments from Rhodesia into Zambia, and that's bound to please President Kaunda. All these laudable aims will be worth little, however, if the Patriotic Front don't accept today's ceasefire proposals from Lord Carrington. The Carrington plan goes as far as the British could, to allaying the Patriotic Front's fears that they will be forced to surrender, and without losing the support of Bishop Muzorewa and his military commander, General Peter Walls. The plan demands that the guerrillas assemble under their commanders and with their arms in these camps. The Commonwealth monitors will be there to see if they stick to the rules. Before that, however, the forces of Salisbury will have gathered here in their operational bases. They have a lot more camps than the Patriotic Front, and on the face of it tonight, the front is saying they could still be surrounded by their enemies. If it works, then Lord Soames would be the governor of peace. If it doesn't, and the ceasefire is breached, then the British are unequivocal. Lord Soames will have to use the Rhodesian forces under his command to heal a breach caused by the Patriotic Front. So, as Lord and Lady Soames left tonight, they had no way of knowing just how long they'll be in Government House Salisbury with the war still on. It all depends on the Patriotic Front. Tomorrow lunchtime they'll be there, and within an hour or 2 of setting foot in Rhodesia, the country will be restored to legality. A last goodbye from Britain's last governor to Rhodesia. Then on to the RAF VC-10. For the new governor, it's an enormous personal task, one which his father-in-law, Sir Winston Churchill, would no doubt have relished. Lord Soames says simply it's the biggest challenge of his life.
2/3 of Shell's petrol drivers and depots here will be back at work tomorrow, and the remaining depots will be deciding what they'll do. The men voted to go back today in depots from Inverness in the north to Plymouth in the south. Shell will be seeing the National Union officials tomorrow. Esso drivers are going on with their overtime ban. Esso says the ban is now stopping 1/3 of their deliveries. The world price of oil could be put up by nearly 1/3 when the oil exporting countries meet in Caracas, Venezuela, next week. Mr. René Ortiz, the General Secretary of OPEC, the oil countries' cartel, said today that a rise of 30% was on the cards. Such a rise would make Britain's North Sea oil very profitable, but it would also bring on a world recession and widespread unemployment. Iran said today it has the support of Libya and Algeria for much higher prices, and even Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states are talking of putting up their prices by 13% right away. Japan has been buying oil at high prices all today, especially from Iran. Worries about the oil price and a bad recession meant people were buying gold as never before. So gold reached a record price, $447.50 for an ounce. That's $16 up in a day, and a sign of the squeeze that the Ayatollah Khomeini is now putting on America and the industrial countries of the West.
The United States and its European allies are talking about extending economic pressure against Iran to try to free the American hostages. American officials traveling with the US Secretary of State, Mr. Cyrus Vance, on his European tour, say there's been discussion of a total trade embargo. The American officials said the Europeans were very interested, but they did not commit themselves. Iran imports 1/4 of its food, 3/4 of its cooking oil, and relies heavily on its oil exports to keep the economy going. And in Iran, Ayatollah Khomeini's main opponent, Ayatollah Shariat Madari, has warned that civil war could break out over the trouble in the northwest province of Azerbaijan. Another 2 people have died in fighting there, this time in Urumiyar, as the trouble spread from Tabriz. Iran's foreign minister, Mr. Kotbazadeh, has said the hostages from the American embassy won't be put on trial for spying until what he called an international grand jury had investigated the alleged crimes of the United States.
The Iranian student arrested in London and deported to France has now been released by the French police. They're satisfied he had nothing to do with the murder in Paris last week of a nephew of the ex-Shah.
In Italy, about a dozen masked terrorists, both male and female, raided the business school at Turin University today. They herded more than 200 teachers and students into a lecture theatre, singled out 10 of them and shot them all in the knees. At least 2 of the wounded are said to be in a serious condition. Before escaping, the terrorists sprayed slogans identifying themselves as Prima Linea, an extreme left-wing group linked to the Red Brigades. The group has attacked a number of Fiat and Olivetta employees in the Turin area. Today they told their victims that they were being shot because they were studying to become bosses. Other targets of kneecapping in Italy have been prison officials, journalists, politicians, business executives and policemen. The terrorists say it's done to teach them a lesson.
France blocked Britain's farmers getting more money and British housewives paying more for food by refusing to devalue what's called the green pound, the system that settles farm prices in the common market. Britain's Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Peter Walker, was told France wouldn't budge unless he gave way on our lamb sales to France. British Conservative and Labour members of the European Parliament at Strasbourg joined forces to help a majority to block the common market's entire budget for next year when it comes up on Thursday. They threw out a supplementary budget of £400 million for Europe's small farmers this year and said they must stop inefficient farmers taking 3/4 of the common market's money. Here's our diplomatic correspondent, Michael Brunson.
The Parliament's corridors are buzzing as members realise for the first time the problems of being elected members of a supranational parliament. Should they go ahead and do things that their own governments and parties back home disapprove of? A problem for French members, for example, in whose country the common agricultural policy is sacred. And what of those British members who represent farming communities and who hear their colleagues from the cities laying into wasteful spending on getting rid of the butter mountain, for example, cheaply to countries like Russia?
£300 million. £300 million for a 250,000 tonnes of butter. That's the subsidy on it. And just to put it into perspective, I've worked out if you took a 250,000 tonnes of butter, this butter that an opportunity has arisen to dispose of, you could actually give 20 packets to every citizen of the United Kingdom, or alternately, if you were so minded, you could lay them round the equator end to end 4 times.
At present, there's some weakening of Parliament's nerve, though just about enough votes still to throw out the 1980 budget, which is what the majority of British members from both parties want.
I may say that we shall vote against it and reject it, and that is what this group will do. Not because certain member states can only gain from a better balanced and less lopsided budget, and not because it's an opportunity to show those who elected us what we can do, but because this is a bad budget for Europe.
The actual vote doesn't take place until Thursday, but tomorrow the budget ministers of the 9 countries, including Britain, are going to come here to Strasbourg to lean on the Parliament, to try to get them not to reject the budget. Michael Brunson, News at 10, Strasbourg.
The government have announced their plans for another reorganisation of the National Health Service. They say they want to make a determined attack on its bureaucracy to make it better for the needs of patients. The government's main proposals are cutting out one level of management. This means that in England most area health authorities would be axed and that about 180 smaller district authorities would run the service. There would be a lot more responsibility for managers of hospitals, and doctors, nurses and other professionals would have a bigger say in hospital management and planning. The government hope the changes will save about £30 million out of the total health service budget of £9,000 million. The National Association of Health Authorities doubt whether these savings can be made. Our Home Affairs correspondent Glyn Mathias asked the Health Secretary, Mr. Patrick Jenkin, why he thought this reorganisation would be more successful than the last one 5 years ago.
The last reorganisation had a number of objectives, one of which, and a number of which have worked well, particularly bringing together the primary care, the community services and the hospital services. But there's a widespread recognition that the management is over-elaborate and top-heavy. that health authorities are too remote from the services they run. We want to bring the service right back to the local level to strengthen the management in the hospital and in the community, and to have smaller districts with health authorities much nearer the people, much nearer the point at which patients are looked after. And I think this is a very widespread view, that these are the changes that are necessary.
When the school was overwhelmed in the Aberfan disaster in South Wales, the Coal Board said it wouldn't happen again. A report on what they've done after the break. Plus, how an ageing team of whinging Poms managed to beat Australia again. And how the League Cup replays came up with a surprise tonight, that's in a couple of minutes.
Where would you find watches by Avia, watches by Seiko, Actim clocks, gold pendants by Lotus, sapphire and diamond rings? Where would you find all these beautiful things? Where you would expect to find everything you value in a jeweler's. James Walker.
Gillette's twin blades shave you closer, and Contour's swivel head follows the contours of your face.
Closer, closer to the one you love. Show that love and feeling more each day in every way. Get closer.
Gillette Contour with twin blades, because the closer you get, the better it feels.
We know you look for value on your drinks at Christmas time, just because we're international stores.
And so we'd like to offer you some international wine,
just because we're international stores. Our Bristol cream is priced just right for Christmas.
And
we stack the shelves with lager to the floors. We've got whiskey, brandy, vodka, gin at £3.99, just because we're international stores.
Value's what it's all about.
Nothing's impossible, we have found, even though your feet are off the ground and the job's looking great. Then she passes your gate and one bird brings the other one down.
Fresh Brew is a new tea from Typhoon with a new blend in a new bag and a really refreshing flavour that puts you right on top again.
So pick yourself up.
Come on, Casanova, pick yourself up.
Enjoy a fresh cup.
The Fresh Brew cup.
And start all over again.
Fresh Brew, the start of Fresh Brew.
It's now more than 13 years since the disaster at Aberfan in South Wales, in which 144 people, most of them children, lost their lives. The cause of that disaster was an unstable coal tip, and ever since then the Coal Board have been working on a scheme that will, they say, ensure that such a disaster could never happen again. As Ken Rees reports, the scheme, which has cost millions of pounds, has changed the shape of the South Wales skyline.
After the horror of Aberfan, there was a determination that it should never happen again. But scenes like these, a waterlogged coal tip sliding into a school, could have been repeated, said Coal Board chiefs today, had it not been for one of Britain's most complex civil engineering jobs. In the next valley at Cwm there was a school too, and above it a dangerous coal tip. The school closed and the NCB embarked on a massive tip safety programme which has lasted 10 years, cost £45 million and transformed the look of the Welsh valleys. 90 years ago, coal waste was simply left where it fell, and, like Aberfan, the marine tip placed millions of tons of waterlogged coal waste right above a community. Here, the Coal Board has spent £2 million driving an 800-yard tunnel deep into the tip to drain away the danger from the very heart of the mountain.
I'm now standing 50 metres down in the heart of the Cwm Colliery tip. And you can just see how dangerous tips can be by the amount of water that's coming in.
Now some 500 gallons of water every minute pours out of the tunnel, leaving just one question for the Coal Board's Colin Jones.
Is there any danger, do you think, of another Aberfan now? I should think not. The board's expertise gained over a number of years in the field is second to none, and we think we've eliminated the possibility altogether.
It will take until 1982 to complete the final stages of the tip safety programme. 40 million tonnes of waste have been removed or landscaped, and in the Welsh valleys there's now the certainty that a disaster like Aberfan will remain a tragic memory. Ken Rees, News at 10, Cwm in South Wales.
Coal output was up 1 million tonnes in the week the miners voted for their 20% pay rise, and the National Coal Board expected to have been even better, with Christmas coming, last week. Making overseas students pay their full fees could mean an avalanche of lecturers put out of work, the Vice-Chancellor of London University, Lord Annan, said today. He said 2 medical schools and the School of Oriental and African Studies, all of which have a lot of overseas students, would have to close. And so, according to him, might the London School of Economics. And a marriage which is to close, lawyers for the shipping heiress, Ms. Christina Onassis, say they've been told to start proceedings for a divorce from her Russian husband, Mr. Sergei Kauzov. They were married in August last year. It was her 3rd marriage.
British Leyland have turned down an offer to buy their bus, truck and tractor division. The offer was made by the millionaire Mr. David Brown of the DJB Engineering Company, but he was told that Leyland Vehicles was on the way to recovery. And soccer, and Arsenal have been knocked out of the League Cup by 3rd Division Swindon in tonight's 5th round replay. Swindon won 4-3, 4 minutes from the end of extra time, after 2 own goals by Arsenal. Swindon won the League Cup final in 1969. They defeated Arsenal on that occasion too. The other 5th round replay result tonight, Wolves drew 1-1 with Grimsby.
Cricket. Geoffrey Boycott, who wasn't even a first choice for England's one-day team last week, scored 105, and England readily won their 2nd international against Australia today. The scores: England 264 for 7, Australia 192 all out. England won by 72. That means England's now 4 clear points ahead of both the West Indies and Australia. So they're much the best place to qualify for the finals. Our sports correspondent Tony Francis saw today's match in Sydney.
If there's one thing the Aussie cricket fan hates, it's being parted from his can of beer. But increasing violence had driven the authorities to stop all alcohol at the turnstiles, and that meant everything. Once inside, though, it was different. And the famous crowd on Sydney Hill did manage to get limited supplies. They needed it to help them over this shock. Jeff Boycott dropped on 16, and how dearly the Australians would pay for that. England's tactics were to maintain a high run rate right from the start. Randall there, but it was the amazing Boycott who set up England's huge total. This is the man who couldn't get into the side because he was supposedly too slow for one-day cricket.
That's well hit.
At the other end, Peter Willey was improvising his way towards a fine half-century.
That's 4 runs.
Boycott went from strength to strength and was on 99 when Dennis Lilly came back to bowl.
And that's a nice way to bring up the 100.
A performance that confirms Boycott's right to rank alongside Viv Richards and Greg Chappell as the most complete batsman in the world. His job was done, and he offered a lazy shot to Dennis Lilly. Out for 105, his 3rd century of the tour so far, and unquestionably one of his very best. Some fans thought that even Ian Chappell would be better than this. You could see their point when Australia collapsed dismally to the varied England attack.
Out. Straight to Randall.
Derek Randall was enjoying every minute as the procession started. Darling gone, Border was next.
And he's gone, played right over it.
Then a lightning piece of stumping by Bairstow to remove Weiner. And just look at his reaction.
What a super piece of wicket keeping, and a nice.
It was all over when Greg Chappell faced Willis. The man to watch is Gower coming in from point. If the fielding was razor sharp, the team spirit was irresistible. It was even time for a frolic. Randall celebrating a hat-trick of wins. Just for a laugh, Brearley gave Randall the last over, and he obliged by dismissing Lachlan, the only Australian to show any resistance. It was that sort of a night.
I'm pleased that I'm playing well, but I'm sensible enough to realise that when you're playing against world-class players like we are, I mean, there's Thompson, there's Hogg who didn't play today, Max Walker, that it's bound to be their day sometime. I mean, I can't just go out and keep getting runs. I mean, I can try, but they're bound to win some, and I just hope that I win my share, that's all, and I get a fair amount of runs so that I can do my own pride a lot of good and show my supporters, and even those that don't like my batting, that I can play a little bit.
Rugby, and a victory for Oxford in the varsity match at Twickenham. It was only their second win in 8 years. They beat Cambridge by 9 points to 3. And here are the main points of the news again. 52,000 jobs are to be lost in the steel industry. That's a third of the workforce. And thousands of miners will lose their jobs as a consequence. Lord Soames has left to become governor of Zimbabwe, Rhodesia. The world price of oil may rise by 30%, and gold has hit a record price. And Arsenal are out of the League Cup.
And when Lord Soames is comfortably installed in Government House, Salisbury, by midday tomorrow, the country now called Zimbabwe Rhodesia will disappear and become again, officially and briefly, the British colony of Southern Rhodesia. So it's Southern Rhodesia for Christmas cards, please, but next year, after the election, it'll change again to Zimbabwe. Hope that's clear. That's the news tonight. Good night.
Now, here's the weather forecast. Tonight will be the coldest night for 17 days. Temperatures down to 4 centigrade, 39 Fahrenheit, with a touch of ground frost. Tomorrow, starting fine, but clouding over during the afternoon as rain spreads in from the west. Top temperature, 8 centigrade, 46 Fahrenheit. The wind, a breezy westerly. That's the weather forecast. In a moment, Before the Monsoon.
This Putney Club is a free house, so it could choose to serve over 100 different bitters. But the members here, hello, I've whittled them down to their favourite 5. And of that 5, the one they choose the most has got to be something special. Don't you think? Well, it is. William Younger's Tartan. It's the bitter people choose, give them the choice. Well chosen, lads.
Here I am, rushing as usual. Still, shouldn't take long with the Moulinex number 16 hairdryer. 1200 watts power means really fast drying, and with 2 speeds and 2 heat settings, it's great value for about $8.65. My hair looks really nice, doesn't it? And it's easy with the Moulinex. Made it.
Evening, Twiggy.
Hi.
We better hurry.
Oh, no. That's all I need, Fred, a soaking. Soon put that right with the Moulinex number 1. It's got 2 settings for hot and cool drying, which is really useful. Great for around $6.25. Now for the finishing touches with the telescopic steam tongs. You never know when you might need them. They only cost about $10.25. Super, eh? How do I do it? Easy with a Moulinex. Moulinex make things simple, and that includes the price.
Where are we? Look at that! I shall drive. It's a Ronson Spirotechnic. Ah, now that's just what I want. Doesn't light.
It's an electric shaver. Probably the most advanced shaver in the world.
It's light enough to be a lighter.
And the angled head means you get a really comfortable shave.
Now, I wonder. Ah, Ronson! Ah, now that's what I want. How does it light?
It's a pen. It's a Ronson flow tip, and it comes in a whole range of finishes. It uses liquid ink and a special nylon tip, so it just glides across the paper. Not bad, eh?
Ah, this is what I want, a Ronson touch light.
Works like a lift button, lights at a touch. And there's lots of other lighters you can choose from, all with a Ronson name for...
Reliability. Happy? Ronson make a lot of things, don't they?
Oh, yes, so be sure to ask for a Ronson Spirotechnic shaver. Or a Ronson flow tip pen.
Or a Ronson touch light.
Beam us up, Scotty.
Christmas goodies from Ronson.
I'm late for a very important date.
The rotary analog quartz.
No time to say hello, goodbye. I'm late.
The rotary gentleman's dress watch.
I'm late for a very important date.
The rotary ladies' dress watch.
No time to say goodbye. Hello, I'm late.
If you can't trust your own timekeeping, trust rotary.
I'm late.
What are we doing?
We're demonstrating how Canada Dry ginger ale blends perfectly with whiskey.
Oh.
There's nothing else to add.
Just that Canada Dry.
So there's nothing for us to do.
Right.
It's a nice green bottle.
Yes. It's rather special.
In March 1977, after nearly 2 years of terror during the state of emergency, the Indian people voted Mrs. Gandhi out of power. With her went the Congress Party, which had ruled India since independence. The victorious Janata Party came to office with a promise of bread and freedom.